I know math is not the Conservative Party of Canada's forte.
And the budget will balance itself.
So,
vigilant in ensuring that all military technology being shared with any other foreign country is rigorously meets the standards that have been set for us.
The honourable member from Edmonton, Strathcona.
A rigorous regime. Israeli arms are being tested in Canada, in Alberta. Canadians do not want to be complicit in Netanyahu's crimes against Palestinian children. Canada should not be buying from these companies and should not be selling to the Israeli government. The minister promised this House to issue a notice to exporters on March 18th, 6 weeks ago. Where is the notice to exporters, and when will Canada finally impose a two-way arms embargo?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our position when it comes to arms export permits is well known, absolutely clear. Now, when it comes to what is happening in the Middle East, we've been clear. The violence must stop. We need a ceasefire now. Hostages must be released, and we need to make sure that humanitarian aid gets into Gaza. And at the end of the day, what we need is a two-state solution where the state of Israel can live side by side in peace and security with a Palestinian state. I've been in contact with my US, UK, and many Arab countries counterpart over the weekend, working hard on bringing back peace to the Middle East. Thank you.
The honourable member from Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, our government has shown great success in attracting historical investment in our auto industry. Can the minister highlight the recent investment from Honda and what it means for building our EV supply chain and growing Canadian jobs?
Good question.
The honourable for innovation.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much to my colleague for his leadership and good question. Yeah, Mr. Speaker, last week we witnessed a $15.7 billion investment by Honda, Mr. Speaker. Woo! This is the largest investment in Honda's history. It is the largest investment in our auto sector, Mr. Speaker, and it's one of the largest investment by a private company in this country, Mr. Speaker. This is great news for our workers across the nation. This is great news for our auto sector, Mr. Speaker. This is great news for Canada, Mr. Speaker. Let's celebrate as Canada becomes a hub for green manufacturing in the 21st century.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Journal de Montréal reported this morning that 25% of Quebecers can't even afford a decent standard of living. Even working 50 hours a week isn't enough to avoid living in poverty. That's where we are after 9 years of this government. The statistics are clear, and the Bloc, which claims to promote Quebec's interests, has voted with the Liberals for every budget allocation to support this exorbitant inflationary spending. Does the government and the Bloc have enough courage to admit that they have let Quebecers down and stop their uncontrolled spending? The Honourable.
How many scandals do you think Trudeau has had? I have another video over here showing how many, and it is a lot. And I think shame needs to be brought back into Canada because he has no shame anymore. And I think it just trickles down to everyone underneath him. And that's what's really frustrating about Trudeau. And as far as an election is concerned, obviously there should have been one a year ago. But do you think it'll really be in October 2025? Because his steam, like all he has to do is smile and for the camera, go on his vacations. There's going to be a new love in his life coming up, probably, because he has to, because he needs to take attention away from himself. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. Let's go back to the video.
Leader of the government. Mr. Speaker, last week we saw the Leader of the Opposition once again encourage white supremacists, anarchists, and misogynists. That happens very regularly, and that draws the admiration of those who claim that school shootings didn't happen. And now the Leader of the Opposition has 30 seconds to speak to this House and to Canadians. Once I've sat down, I ask him to disavow the opinions of these dangerous people. Will he do it? The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Oh, Mr. Speaker, during that time, what about the $54 billion that Canadians and Quebecers have to pay in interest to banks in London and...
I know math is not the Conservative Party of Canada's forte.
And the budget will balance itself.
So,
New York because of this government's uncontrolled spending, supported by the Bloc Québécois. Think about it, Mr. Speaker. The Bloc has voted for every budget allocation, and so today we have interest that has to be paid that is the equivalent to federal health transfers to all of the provinces. We could do much more with that money. Will the government end its uncontrolled spending, and will the Bloc stop supporting them? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Conservatives showed us his true colours last week, and by refusing to disavow these points of view, he's doing it again. I wonder how the Conservative Quebec caucus can support this. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition speaks without conviction and clarity on a matter that should be very, very simple. Mr. Speaker, his silence speaks volumes. This is not leadership. The Honourable Member for Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for his question. I have a lot of respect for him, but he saw in the recent budget presented by the Minister of Finance that this is about intergenerational fairness, giving an opportunity to each generation, Mr. Speaker, investing in the priorities of Quebecers. We're talking about housing. We're talking about the cost of living, but also about growth. I'm sure that my colleagues from Quebec saw that last week we announced a record investment from IBM in Bromont to allow Canada and Quebec to be leaders in semiconductors. It's by being a nation that invests, that's how we're doing it. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, after 9 years under this government, the Prime Minister is not worth the cost. The cost of living keeps going up. In an article in La Presse, it says that despite this...
I know math is not the Conservative Party of Canada's forte.
And the budget will balance itself.
So,
the expenses to help those most in need. Recent data from Statistics Canada show that they are still experiencing more difficulty in feeding themselves. The Bloc has voted to support $500 billion in spending. When will the Liberals, supported by the Bloc, stop their uncontrolled spending? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, last time the Conservative leader was in power, he tried to increase the age of retirement to 67. It's the Liberal government that reversed that decision. We reduced the taxes of the middle class and increased that for the richest 1%. They voted against our plan. Today, we are investing in Canadians thanks to tax on the wealthiest, and they're still against our plan. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. La Presse revealed this morning that the expansion of the Porta Valley field is being torpedoed by the federal government. The Border Services Agency, claiming a lack of resources, is withdrawing the operator's right to handle containers at this port of vital importance to the regional economy. The Mayor of Salaberry de Valleyfield and the Director of Economic Development have both strongly denounced this foolish decision. Will the Minister of Public Safety intervene to ask the agency to continue doing its job instead of undermining the future?
And is Chrystia Freeland doing a good job? She is the Finance Minister and the Vice President of Canada, and she is the one that just looks like her head is just spinning when she talks. It's always like trying to drag it on, never answer a question. And maybe they should have this I thought they would always do this. When they ask a question, say, do you mind after you finish it if you give me 5 seconds to say if you answered it or not for our listeners? Because it is so frustrating. Everything is an infomercial with both of them. And that's something that I think needs to be stopped. Maybe the whole Constitution and the human rights and everything needs to be rewritten again after those two are gone, because this is just frustrating what they're doing. Anyway, let's go back to the video.